The thing that was amazing to me is we were standing there getting ready with the pastor, and my best man was standing with me, and all of a sudden I got cold feet. And I said, "What am I doing here?" And then the pastor took me over to where the window was and where she was, and it said, "Look out there." I saw her, and it really melted my heart all over again. We're all right. We're all right.
You were okay then. Hey everyone, welcome back to Deciding to Love. I'm your host, Nathan Holritz. It is a privilege, as always, to have you here today. This is episode number 3. If you missed the first couple of episodes or even the trailer, make sure you go back and listen to or watch those episodes. And today I'm going to be sharing the full-length interview with my grandfather. I gave you a teaser, an intro to it in episode number 1, but I'll share that full-length interview here in just a little bit. Before I do, though, I want to give you a brief update on the show and the direction of the show. Part of my original intention with this show was to create mini documentaries. Almost imagine like a combination of mini documentaries / romantic drama, where there's a combination of visual storytelling, interview, great music, that ultimately highlights couples in long-term romantic relationships who've created something that they really enjoy, that they want to be in, and learn from both the challenges they've gone through and the lessons that they've learned as a result. And hopefully we can apply some of that to our relationships to create the long-term romantic relationships that we want. Innate to creating, though, these mini documentaries, of course, is a lack of anonymity. And the other part of my intention in these conversations is to get into depth, into intimate detail regarding these relationships, some of the challenges again, and also the lessons. In order to do that, though, I think it's going to make more sense moving forward. And this is based, at least in part, in conversation that I had in this last week, to go to an audio-only format. And by doing so, and going to a first name basis and taking faces off screen, hopefully it will encourage more couples to come on the show and to feel more comfortable being even more open and vulnerable on the show. Because the last thing that I want at the end of the day is for this not just this episode, but certainly this show as a whole to lack depth, to be surface level, and just to be a repetition of basic principles that you've heard previously. I want to get into depth in these conversations with couples. And I think in order to encourage that, it's going to make sense to go to an audio-only format moving forward. So I am going to be putting a call out for guests here in the next week or two. And hopefully that will encourage more people to be interested in being on the show. Or if you know of somebody that you think would be a great candidate for the show, you can tell them about it as well. And you can go to decidingtolove.com and just shoot me a message, or have them shoot me a message and let me know if they'd like to be interviewed for the show. And we can do this remotely, we can do this in person, we'll work out those details. But I just wanted everybody to know that, at least for the majority of those episodes, unless the couple is willing to have their face on camera and to be known at a broader level, that we are going to be going to an audio-only format for those episodes. So I'm actually going to be doing that today. So during the interview portion, I'll do these video intros and outros, but during the interview portion, we'll go to just audio-only and a simple screen. Now, today's episode is highlighting my grandfather. In episode number 1, I gave you part of this interview, but today is kind of the full-length version of that. And my grandfather and my grandmother were married for 66 years. They've both since passed. But when I interviewed my grandfather, he was 100 years old. So cool. And you'll hear the wisdom in his voice that comes from 100 years on this world. But he is the best example that I know personally of how to love your partner well. And by the way, how to do so through a variety of challenges. One of the things that we don't get into in this show is that my grandmother, probably for the last maybe 20, 25 years of her life, had all types of physical challenges, surgeries and the like, that added to the challenges that my grandfather speaks of that were psychological in nature. And again, despite these challenges, my grandfather just loved in the most gracious and beautiful and warm and romantic way to the very end. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful thing and a wonderful example for all of us. Now, as I said, he was 100 years old when I interviewed him. So the conversation is going to go a little bit slow. There may be a little bit of repetition in there, but I think that if you just take a deep breath and maybe kind of turn off the need to rush through everything and really just soak in what he has to say here, both the wisdom and the warmth in his voice, but also the actual ideas that he speaks about. I think that you'll find something here that is particularly encouraging and inspirational and even challenging in the end. So without further ado, here's the interview with my grandfather.
So maybe we can start with the backstory. Let's go back to the very beginning. I would love to hear a little bit about the first time that you met Grandma.
Yeah. Well, it happened down in Corpus Christi, Texas. I was in the Navy there, and I was attending a church on ashore, and they had every Saturday night down in the main park of Corpus Christi, Texas, and it was a sort of what we called a street meeting, and I spotted this young lady, and I was kind of awestruck when I met her, and I nudged the sailor that was with me, and I says, "I'm going to marry that girl."
Really, the first time that you saw her?
First time I saw her. The thing is, she was giving her testimony out there on a street meeting. I don't know if you know what a street meeting is, but it's an evangelistic tool that you go out on the street and you start a meeting, and then people gather around and different ones give their testimonies, and that's how. So I heard her give her testimony, and I was really struck with it. It really moved my heart.
And so was this before you had even met her the first time?
Met her the first time, that's right.
And what about the way that she was communicating as she was speaking? What about that struck you?
One of the things that was amazing, she carried a very large Bible. It wasn't the size, that you usually carry. She carried one that was almost like a big dictionary. And so what she would do is open that up, and she would read a few verses of the scriptures and then give her testimony, and then she would put the book up on her shoulder while she was speaking, and I just thought that was quite unique.
Tell me a little bit about what you might remember from the first conversation that you had with her.
Well, on our first outing, you might say, I was quite interested in her life and how she came about to be where she was, and I was so awestruck. She came out of a very dysfunctional family, and so this, of course, was quite strange for me because my family background was very lovely, but she knew nothing of that. And so I was impressed with her and her attitude that she had towards, especially her father, who was very, very mean. And this really amazed me and struck me. I'd never met anybody like that before, and she had such a wonderful attitude towards that whole situation.
So despite the difficulties, she was very gracious in her attitude toward her father.
Very much so. And it was amazing to me to see what could come out of a dysfunctional family like hers. She had lost her mother, and her father had remarried, and that wasn't a very good situation. There were, I think, there were 11 children between the two marriages, and my wife became, you might say, the mother to these people. Especially when the second wife wasn't there then, but she came out of a very dysfunctional family.
So, how long was it between the time that you first met and the time that you proposed to her?
Not very long. It was a matter of weeks. Actually, I got acquainted with her because I really loved the testimony that she gave in the life that she came from, and I was interested in knowing that person better, and so it was.
Do you remember when you proposed to her?
Yes.
How did that story go?
Well, we were down on the what we call the T head down where the boats came into. They were not commercial boats, but people had their own boats, and there was a place for that there, and it was a beautiful spot, and so it was a nice place to sit down and rest. There was a park all around us, so it was a very, very nice atmosphere. And so I popped the question.
And did she immediately say yes?
Yes.
And then how soon after did you get married?
I think it was about 6 months.
Okay. Is there something that in particular stands out from your wedding day?
No, I was just the thing that was amazing to me is we were standing there getting ready with the pastor, and my best man was standing with me, and all of a sudden I got cold feet, and I said, "What am I doing here?" And then the pastor took me over to where the window was and where she was, and said, "Look out there." I saw her, and it really melted my heart out all over again. We're all right. We're all right.
You were okay then.
So that from the time that we met until we were married, it was less than 6 months.
After you got married, what was it like to do life together? Thinking back to that point when you first had this opportunity to do life with this person, what did that feel like?
Well, it was wonderful. I mean, it was. It seemed so natural. It's the only word what you could really use. It just this is it. This is it. And I think that's the outstanding thing that comes to me.
I know that you all were married for, is it 66 years? Is that right?
Yes.
And there's so many different directions that we could go in conversation. We could spend hours and hours and hours. But again, I have so much respect for the love that you demonstrated to Grandma. I had the privilege of being able to watch that for years and years. And so what I'd really love is to share with the listeners what some of the key ideas maybe that you learned in your relationship with Grandma. I know that you faced many challenges together over the years, but I'm wondering if you might be able to share one or two in particular from which you learned about how to develop a stronger and happier relationship.
One of the things is that my wife had come out of a dysfunctional family, as I mentioned, which has its effect upon each person
Sure.
that goes through an experience, things like that, and so it was something new for me. But I knew that if we were going to live together, I was going to have part in her life and to help her through these situations, because on occasions there were flashbacks of some of the things that happened in that dysfunctional family. And really, from that time, I mean, she never really 100% got over it. And so there was a need, as I saw it, to get under her and carry her through, help her to go through these times, because it wasn't a constant effect, of course, but she would have these times that were extremely difficult, and I had to learn to cope with that and to help her through that situation.
It strikes me, and I continue to learn this in my life and in various relationships, work and personal and so forth, the significance of communication. And especially in the situation that you just described, communication obviously is vital.
Yes.
Talk a little bit, if you will, about the significance of communication in your relationship and what you learned about how to communicate more effectively.
Well, it was a learning experience, of course. I had come out of a very loving home. Relationship with my siblings it was just wonderful, but she had not had any of that. And so to her, some of the ways that I would responded to my family, it was it was hard for her to understand. Um, there wasn't a particular love in her life. Well, there was a love, but there wasn't that, there wasn't that loving relationship with the family. And so it wasn't, the family life wasn't anything to kind of look forward to. And so when she observed what my family was like, that she had to adjust to that. My family was just very close together, and the relationship was so different from hers, and she had a hard time getting used to it. Another thing, and this is a little bit comical, my mother came to me one time when I brought her up there to meet the family, and we were from the north and she was from the south, and the young people, when they talk to their elders in the south, it's yes ma'am, no ma'am.
Right.
So my mother came to me one day and she says, "Doesn't Jeanette love me?" And I said, "Yes, why?" And she says, "Well, it's always yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am," and things like that. And she wasn't used to that, and she took it as a fact that she
A
was
formality, maybe.
yeah.
Okay.
And so I had to explain what that was like to her,
Hmm.
because of course we were from the way up in the in North Dakota to grow up there, and she was way down near the Mexican border, so we couldn't have been farther apart. But this was a problem to my mother to understand that society. She wasn't being cold. She
Right.
was being highly respectful of my mother.
One of the things that still strikes me as I think back to watching you and Grandma interact is the amount of affection that you showed her. You were extremely complimentary of her, how she looked, and verbally so, but then you also showed that affection physically, just by a touch or a hug or a kiss. Was that something that Grandma also wasn't used to from her background?
She was definitely not used to that. There was none of that affection shown in the family. I'm sorry to say that was, and that was hard for her to adjust to that, really.
You mentioned the challenge that came with Grandma's background, and of course learning how to love her through. I guess you could say the baggage that she carried from that background, and that being a significant challenge. What comes to mind maybe as another particular challenge that you all worked through in your relationship?
This is very personal. The family that she came out of was very, very dysfunctional, and she had a hard time getting used to how I would respond. In other words, my response was far different from what her father had been towards her.
Hmm.
And as a result of this, it was a major problem.
Sure.
And in some cases, she was it made her very fearful.
So fear in the context of an affectionate relationship, do you mean, or how do you mean when you say fear?
Both physical and emotional. Her relationship with her father had been anything but good.
Hmm.
And she carried that in and wondered if, I don't know whether I can say she wondered, but she know this, how am I going to be towards her?
Right. It's a natural human tendency, I think, to, from our own personal experiences, then project that onto other relationships. And so she carried that with her.
Yes.
But I have to say again that it was such a beautiful thing to watch and listen to, the level of care and affection that you showed to her.
There was one thing, I always called her honey. And then when we got to Japan, I had translated it into Japanese and called her Hachimitsu,
Hachi.
which means honey.
Yeah.
And the Japanese couldn't get over hearing that. And then what I actually started doing is abbreviating it and saying Hachimitsu. I would just call her Hachi.
Hachi. Yes.
The Japanese got used to it after a while. They realized what it was. But
So, my primary intention with this podcast, my desire is to have conversations with a variety of people to get their perspective on what it takes to have a happy relationship. And so I'm wondering if you'd be willing to sum up from your perspective, particularly in your relationship with Grandma, what do you feel it takes to have a happy, in this case, a romantic relationship with your partner?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to put in words. It's identifying yourself with that person, if that makes sense. But there is that deep relationship of love for one another that that crosses many bridges.
Mm. In order for two people to develop a deep relationship, as you said, it's two people, two different backgrounds, two understandings and perspectives on life. It does require a deep amount of empathy if you want to build a really strong relationship.
Yes.
And again, you demonstrated that so beautifully with Grandma. Can you talk just a little bit about how to develop that sense of empathy for somebody else?
I mean, it may sound simple, but it is not. It's a matter of a loving relationship. And if the love is there, it endures. And you go through things and you learn together because you love one another. And the differences that you have. There's in every I would say in every marriage relationship there is you both come from a different background, and there has to come a common ground on which you meet together and communicate, and when there are these things that you don't understand, you face them dead on,
Right.
with a loving relationship, and and I think that's the key to the whole thing. In marriage, there's a blending of all of us are different. All of us have come out of different backgrounds, and when you step into a marriage relationship, which is so personal and so highly relational, that you really got to. There's got to be a love, a real love there, that can bridge the gap. That makes sense.
I think so. Yeah. Well, so we've talked a little bit about the affection that you demonstrated for Grandma. We've talked a little bit about the empathy that you demonstrated for Grandma. When I think about empathy, I think in order to be empathetic with somebody, we have to set aside our preferences for the other person. And at the root of that type of behavior is the concept of service.
Yes.
And yet again, you demonstrated this concept of service for somebody else in your relationship with Grandma. Will you talk a little bit about what's at the root of that service-oriented heart that you had and the way that you took care of her?
Again, it sounds so simple, but it isn't. But it is this love relationship, that you love a person. I mean, you come to the place where you die for that person, and that's to me the core of the whole thing is willing to sacrifice yourself, and put yourself and your desires into second place, and that the relationship, desiring to get to know that one that you're married to, so that you get to know them, that the walls are down and the roof is off, and you're love is sacrificial. it needs it's and it's long suffering.
Yeah.
And these things, there are times when, that you got two personalities, and they have to blend into one, and where two different things are there. There's a friction,
For sure.
and you've got to live through those.
In our culture, I think our culture tends to define love more as a feeling than an action or a choice. As I've come to understand love, I understand it more as a choice that you have to make consistently. Is that?
It is.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with you. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, if you will. What does it mean to choose over and over to love someone versus, again, as I think our culture tends to think, that there's this almost assumption, conscious or otherwise, that if we feel like we love somebody, then we act accordingly. But if we don't feel like we love that person, then we just kind of stop, we give up. You can't have a long-term committed relationship the way that you and Grandma did without making that choice over and over again. Will you talk just a little bit about that as we close?
I think that where the big rub comes is that one of them only thinks of themselves, or maybe both of them do. And I want to, you need to please me.
Right.
Whereas if you're I think in a loving relationship, there is, what can I do to please the other one? It needs to, love is, to me, is a willing, and you don't look upon it as a sacrifice. It's a privilege. You're trying to win that person. There's always the desire to win that person. I wanted to please her. I wanted to do everything I could to make her happy. I had been criticized for the way that I did this.
How so?
They just felt that, they sometimes felt that I leaned over too far. But the feeling that was in my heart was, she's the one I want. And I want to please her. And I knew also we were trying to establish a home that in some respects was 180 degrees different from what she was experiencing.
Right.
That makes sense?
It does. Yeah.
And so this is what we worked on.
Wasn't that amazing? Just his voice, the level of graciousness and kindness and warmth innate to his voice, incredible. And believe it or not, that was my grandfather. That's and especially the way that he treated my grandmother. It was an absolutely stunning thing to get to watch, and certainly a privilege and an inspiration and a challenge and encouragement. And I hope it is and was for you as well. I don't want to rehash the whole episode, but there are a couple big ideas that I want you to just continue to rehash in your mind as you move on now through your day and your week. Number one, where he talks about the idea of connecting with your partner, loving your partner in a way that the walls are down and the roof is off. That's transparency and openness and honesty at a level that we should all strive for if we want a great long-term romantic relationship. If we are in some version of defensive mode or critical mode with our partner, there isn't going to be room for that. We need to learn to set aside those negative tendencies and with our partner work toward that level of transparency and vulnerability. The other thing that he talks about is even after decades of marriage, continuing to strive to win Grandma. And I think that's a wonderful inspiration for us to all walk away from today's interview with, that even after time, when we look at long-term romantic relationships, whether it's subconscious or otherwise, there is a tendency for couples to kind of give up or to stop trying. If we intend to have a great enjoyable long-term romantic relationship, we simply can't stop trying. We need to continue to work intentionally to win the other person's heart. All right, I'll leave you with that for today. Thanks again for listening in, and we'll see you in the next episode.